Oh, Rick Tocchet, baby. He's gone out there and given us some news and some very interesting things to talk about. Starting out with yesterday's comments made during the practice, I'm pretty sure it was. Let's talk about the goaltending situation in Vancouver. Because we may have ourselves a controversy? Do you want to say it like that? I don't know. Is that the right word to use? Either way, this is the tweet that I'm referring to by Farhan Lalji earlier from yesterday. Tocchet says he hasn't decided who will start in goal tomorrow, but Arturs Silovs is a possibility. Tocchet also said that the Vancouver Canucks might carry 3 goaltenders in the playoffs. Okay, what does that mean? That sounds like a very simple comment, but I wanted to dive into this because if the Vancouver Canucks head into the 2023-2024 playoffs with 3 goaltenders rotating around, Demko, DeSmith, Silovs, my first concern is, okay, what's going to happen to the gosh darn AHL team? Like, when it comes to the Abbotsford Canucks and the entire AHL playoffs that are going to go on over there, I mean, what, are the Abbey Canucks going to roll with Sawchenko the entire time? Is Arturs Silovs not going to get a sample of AHL playoff hockey because he'll be with the main club the entire time? In practice, it works for Vancouver because it's like, okay, if you're not confident in Casey DeSmith, then you can roll with Silovs, he can be the backup, he can play in relief, and Thatcher Demko will be the number 1 guy. Obviously, ideally, you don't want to see your backups play at all in the postseason. You'd prefer for Demko to play every single minute, but if there's some disaster scenario, Demko lets in 5 goals and 5 shots, or you need a guy to step in there and play, then Silovs getting the call over Casey DeSmith, while it doesn't really fit the narratives reputation-wise, like, okay, Casey DeSmith has been in the NHL longer, he was better longer, Arturs Silovs is technically a rookie. Okay, it doesn't really make sense on paper, but when you ride the hot hand, when you go with the guy who gives you more confidence in the moment, especially when you consider Casey DeSmith and how he's been sort of faltering the past few weeks, honestly, I feel like that Minnesota game, the 10-7 loss, broke him in a way. Then okay, I can understand why Arturs Silovs would be brought up and kept on this roster. It's just, again, you're not guaranteed any playing time if you're the backup goaltender. I am kind of concerned because the Abbey Canucks have clinched a playoff spot. They're in the postseason too. So hearing that Arturs Silovs might be sticking around in Vancouver to be a tertiary backup in some way, whilst the AHL team is doing their own thing, I think there'd also be some value if the Canucks decided to keep Arturs Silovs in Abbotsford and give him all of those starts with the baby Canucks. But obviously, that's just a very small, nitpicky issue. It's not really the biggest deal in the world. If anything, you could debate that Arturs Silovs is already ready to play NHL minutes in a full-time backup capacity, and therefore leaving Casey DeSmith in a position where his future may not really be all too certain with this team. We all know his contract is expiring at the end of this season, so for Casey DeSmith, this might have been like the perfect transitory season that we had seen out of Vancouver Canucks backups, because as Casey DeSmith was faltering and failing, you had Arturs Silovs on the rise, instilling confidence with the team in front of him and getting those results. So for Arturs Silovs, his comeuppance onto the team, his success compiled with Casey DeSmith and his faltering seems to have created a very direct set of instructions for the Vancouver Canucks heading into the postseason and next year. In fact, you may not even need to wait until the postseason to see this transition take place, because we have ourselves an article published from Noah Strang earlier today on Daily Hive. Looks like Arturs Silovs starts and Lindholm is playing for the Vancouver Canucks tonight against the Arizona Coyotes. By the way, that's the same Arizona team that we had just talked about earlier today, because they could very well be on their way out of Arizona. So the Coyotes and the Canucks, they're playing later today at 7:30 p.m. PST rather than 7 p.m. So that's going to be really interesting to note. Why is there a 30-minute lull between the normal start time and today's start time? It's in Rogers Arena, but it is taking place half an hour later, so be on the lookout for that. Don't get all confused when you tune into Sportsnet and see that the programming is not on. But further updates from today's practice. This is what Rick Tocchet said in regards to the idea of Arturs Silovs getting the start in net. I'll talk to Clarky. We haven't made it 100%, but it looks that way, Tocchet said about the decision to start the Latvian goaltender tonight. And honestly, when you talk about this, you say Arturs Silovs has, in a way, beaten out Casey DeSmith for that crease. You can't go out there and say this is not deserved, man. Arturs Silovs has worked his butt off in the games that he has played, in the games that he has won. He has had some really good results, and even in the Vegas game, he had a bad opening 10 minutes. He let in 2 shots to open up the entire contest, both from Jack Eichel, but ever since then, he had locked it down. He let in 1 goal extra after that from Noah Hanifin at the point on the power play, but everything else was great. Arturs Silovs had been such a big part of the Vancouver Canucks defeating the Vegas Golden Knights, and now against a weaker team in Arizona, this is probably an opportunity for him to showcase, hey, can he string together consistent starts at the NHL level? Can he consistently be that guy? And if he's capable of doing that, heading into the 23-24 playoffs, okay, the Canucks may have no choice but to keep him up and have Casey DeSmith as technically the 3rd guy now. It's kind of crazy how this works, but I think it's kind of perfect when you talk about the development. If you have a tandem next season of Demko-Silovs, you let DeSmith go to free agency, you don't have to sign yourselves another goaltender to play in that backup position. This may be perfect for Vancouver because the past few years have been riddled with all these extra free agents signing goaltenders that are making their way onto the team and just clogging up spots. You've got the Colin Delias of the world, the Louis Domingues, the Braden Holtbys, Yara Halaks. There were so many guys rotating around in that backup spot for Vancouver, and if Casey DeSmith takes a back seat and Arturs Silovs steps up to play big time, this could be the tandem for next year. And we don't even have to speculate as to which free agent goaltender the Vancouver Canucks are going to go after, because they keep on doing it, and this time around it seems like they don't need to. Spencer Martin was also in that position too, but he unfortunately was not good enough to hold that down. Meanwhile, you had yourself some comments made by Rick Tocchet in regards to Elias Lindholm. I'll talk to him after this skate, but this was kind of the game or the next game, so we'll see how he feels, and we'll go from there. This article says it seems like Elias Lindholm will be making his way over to the lineup once more. He hasn't played a game since March 23rd. It also says here that Lindholm finished this morning's optional pre-game skate early, while Oman, Podkolzin, Juleson, Friedman, and Casey DeSmith stayed late. That's usually a good indicator that those players will not be playing tonight. It also suggests that Phil DiGiuseppe could be drawing back into the lineup as the Canucks take on the Arizona Coyotes. Tocchet, of course, though, he formerly coached this Coyotes team, so he had some comments to say about them, too. They're a sneaky team that scores a lot. Clayton Keller is a dangerous player. Schmaltz, those guys, they can score, and those guys are very good hockey players. They're a really good rush team. When you play a team that's good off the rush, if you're not focused, they can burn you. So, heading into tonight's game, we do have ourselves potentially, the return of Elias Lindholm. Arturs Silovs is getting the call in net, and with the very interesting idea being brought up that Arturs Silovs can stick around with the main team during the playoffs, it looks more and more likely that this is shaping up to be what the Canucks tandem in net looks like for next season. Demko and Silovs. No more doubt, no more ambiguity, no more extra guys taking in roles here. Sure, I will say the possibility does exist that Arturs Silovs just goes down the Spencer Martin route where he plays very well towards the end of a season and then he makes his full-time debut as the backup in the next year, but he disappoints. But the difference is Spencer Martin was like 25, 26 years old. Arturs Silovs is still fairly young to be able to develop and give him the benefit of the doubt. So for Silovs, this is going to be good for him. If he's able to string together a good set of numbers in this game against Arizona, this could bode very well for his future and his resume trying out for the team. The 23-year-old goaltender still has a lot more to prove, but he is on the right path. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Rick Tocchet revealing this information. What are your thoughts on the returns of Elias Lindholm and potentially PDG into the lineup? And what are your thoughts on Silovs and his progression ever since his call-up? And what are your thoughts as well on Casey DeSmith and his inevitable downfall? That's a really harsh word to use, but I'm going to use it anyway. He hasn't really been as good as he was when Demko initially went out, but either way, thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99, and bye.